with a reminder that we're in the middle of Eastertide. We've gone through Easter, the high holy day of the church, and now we're in Eastertide, a 50-day period between Easter and Pentecost, which of course is the birthday of the church. This is the third Sunday in Eastertide. We begin counting with Easter Sunday itself. Pentecost will be May 24th, and I'll be here that day, May 24th. Jesus still has many things to teach his disciples from now until Pentecost, until his ascension. Last week was Thomas Sunday. I did some research before I did service last week. It's the day in the liturgical calendar that recognizes Jesus coming to his fearful disciples in a locked room, showing his wounds to them. That actually happens on Easter Sunday, and Thomas wasn't there with them. But a week later, 8 days later, on Sunday again, there Jesus was before all of them, including Thomas, showing his scars to Thomas. And Thomas immediately believed, saying, "My God, my Savior." And even though he didn't believe at first, Thomas stayed with the disciples when he was told in the middle of the week about Jesus. He didn't believe, but he stayed with them. He hung in there with him and believed in the possibility that his doubts might be transformed into faith. As a quick aside, when I was in seminary, I learned that the original meaning of the word faith wasn't about belief in something or about belief in anything. It had to do with loyalty to a person. It has to do with honesty and truthfulness in relationship with others. Faith has to do with being in relationship. It's about entering into a living relationship with God, who is already present to us. And I thought that was an important distinction, because a lot of people talk about their faith like it's believing in the Ten Commandments or believing in the Sermon on the Mount or the words of Jesus, but it's all about relationship. With the experience Thomas had with Jesus, Jesus is trying to ground the disciples, their faith, their relationship with him, in the reality of his presence, in the concreteness of his being. In our scripture today, Jesus says, "Look at my hands and feet, see that it is I myself." He says, "Touch me and see, for a ghost doesn't have flesh and bones as you see that I have." Jesus told the disciples to touch him, to see that he was really real. He showed them his hands and his feet. Perhaps he hopes to ground them in some fleshly reality, that he's not just something to think about or to believe in. He was real for them. It's like he's saying, "Look, I've got hands, I've got feet, touch me, I'm real. I've got flesh and I've got bones. I'm real, like the Velveteen Rabbit, like Pinocchio. I'm a real boy." Of course, he didn't say that to the disciples, but he's talking about being flesh and blood like them. He even ate in front of them later in Luke, in our passage from today. The passage said, "Yet for all their joy they were disbelieving and wondering. And he said to them, 'Have you anything to eat?' They gave him a piece of boiled fish, and he took it and he ate it in their presence." He was announcing to them that he was really real. 2 weeks earlier at Easter, he'd been present with them, all but Thomas, in that upper room. Today, they were expressing joy, yet still had some doubts, and that's when he ate before them, and that seemed somehow to make a difference. Perhaps Jesus ate that piece of fish as a way of finally proving his presence. Maybe we provide proof that we are impacted by his presence by any work we do in food banks or in feeding programs. Maybe we remind people of reality and the connectedness of life. Relationships, even in our faith in people, by the tradition of potlucks. Perhaps they began in churches as part of the resurrection story of Jesus. Maybe even sharing a meal with a neighbor, like mine did for me last night. One question to ask ourselves is, what can we provide? What hands-on proof can we give that we've been impacted by our faith, by our relationship with Jesus, with God, with divine, however you want to name it? The idea of food banks and feeding the hungry, even church potlucks, are outside the context of worship, though. What could be done in the context of worship around these ideas? I think of this Sunday school class, there's usually something to eat, and something is provided through hands in this Sunday school class. One of the functions of worship is to inspire people to do service. Excuse me. So a church might find a specific program or project to settle on, and then worship could be a place to raise ideas to challenge people in their thinking creatively about something like a feeding program. Another idea might be to touch another tradition, to touch another perspective. For a church to take hold of something that takes us out of ourselves long enough to embrace the realities of another's existence. And I remember that this church went to Wichita, help me, where did you go?
Hindu.
Pardon?
The Hindu.
The Hindu, yes. So this church is doing these kinds of things. The encouragement is to keep on doing them.
Or donating to the city for those who can't afford to pay their electric bill.
For this small church, this church does do things, and I'm very impressed with the things that the church does. I'm looking more in general at churches. Overcoming racism is an ongoing process of learning and education. It's a constant reminder that embracing those of a different race or ethnicity involves stretching ourselves and our practices to include and embrace diversity. We are challenged to continue the task of ending racism in ourselves and in society. I remember providing a YouTube clip at one of the other churches where I was for a while, and I can't remember right now what the YouTube clip was about, except that there were people of different races in the video. And a man in the church who had a chance to see it ahead of time said, "I wonder what the congregation will think having black folks in this video." And I was just astounded. So I don't know if it said more about him or about the church. I'm wondering if it said more about him. This emphasis on touching the lives and experiences of others is an important opportunity to embrace this challenge. I'm involved in a group in Pratt that's trying to take care of the Hispanic community ahead of time before ICE comes in, which we think they could. We don't know for sure, but we want to be prepared ahead of time. So we have a small group that has reached out. There's like 4 or 5 women that have reached out to the Hispanic community to find out what their needs might be. And discovered that they feel very unsafe with the white community in Pratt. And that just broke my heart to hear that they're not treated well at all. And the person that was a spokesperson for the Hispanic community asked to stay anonymous so that nothing would come back on her. But what we're doing is I'm going to tell you this, I want to be more careful in Pratt about talking about it, but we've created the Red Balloon Club. They started out thinking anti-ICE, but they didn't want to use that name because they don't want the community to understand what it's about. So we have 2 things that we will be helping with if we're called on. First, there's a text number that if somebody in the Hispanic community sees unfamiliar cars in their area that could be ICE, that they could text to this one number, and then a mass text will be sent out for us to go out to that community to be witnesses.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is we have an 8.5 by 11 paper with a red balloon printed on it, and we'll hang it on our car windows, side windows, so that the people in the community will know that we're safe. that we don't need to be worried about. And the other thing we're doing is we're going to set up an email address so that if somebody in the Hispanic community doesn't feel safe about taking children to school or going to get groceries, they can send an email, and we'll put out a mass email to see if there's somebody that would take care of that for them. It wouldn't be us paying for the groceries, that's just picking them up at Dillon's or Walmart. So those are the two things we're thinking about. They went to the school system, and the school system said we don't need any help. And that's okay, that's where they're at right now. I found a 2-page list of things for churches to do if ICE ends up on their doorstep. And I'm going to share this with the women so that maybe, I don't know about the pastors in Pratt. The other United Methodist pastor I feel very safe with, and that he would be okay with this, but I don't know how the others would receive it. But I'm going to offer it to them in case they want to use it. But they want to go to law enforcement to see if there's something we can do to help there, to the hospital, to other groups like that to see where we can help. And I just feel so thankful that Pratt's doing something proactively.
Good for them.
Yes, yes. Again, our world is asking us to show our faith by how we choose to live. The way we encounter those unlike us is one way we have of grounding our faith in the reality of this world, to touch and to see people. Another idea for this day and age, I've come across a website called Leaving MAGA. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's been developed by a man named Rich Logis, Logis, who was in the depths of the MAGA organization. And things just started not making sense to him, and he chose to leave, but it wasn't an easy thing to do. It was family, it was friends, and he was going against them. And he's written a book titled One Betrayal Too Many, about his journey out of MAGA. And he has this website, and in the website he offers support for those desiring to leave MAGA. He also has support groups for people who have family or friends that are strong supporters of this administration, to help them better understand their family and friends that might be connected to it. I've shared this with several people who had family or friends that were deeply ingrained in MAGA, and I don't know if they've done anything with it, but at least they know. The website, the website offers the support group for folks who are impacted by loved ones who are affiliated with MAGA. I just think that we can think and act differently, both in our interactions with other people. And I say this not being connected to my sister right now, but I'm not able to talk to her at all, let alone politically.
It's okay.
Thank you.
You can't fix everybody.
Yes.
You just can't.
Yes, but it's hard when it's family. It's hard. The author of the Gospel according to Luke says Jesus showed them his hands and his feet. He does say, touch me and see. Actually, if we dig a little deeper, he doesn't just say touch me and see. He says, grab hold of me. I mean, that's what he means. That's what the words mean. Grab hold of me, handle me, even grope around, recognize who I am and what's happened, and that I'm really here. The Gospel according to John says that Jesus says, don't hang on to me, to Mary Magdalene at the garden. But in Luke, Jesus says to the disciples, grab hold of me, ground yourself in me, grab hold of me, and behold, grab hold and see, as if their lives depended on it, as if their hopes would be found in it. Like the disciples, we are invited to grab hold of the reality of Christ and see not just him, but our own lives as well, to see our paths, our own futures, our own missions, our own reasons for being. And then I wrote about my next door neighbor, which I already told you about Cain and his accident. To be out there by himself for a good half an hour with no help. he couldn't reach his phone. It just happened that somebody drove by and saw him and called 911.
Did he share with you any of his thoughts? What was kind of running
No,
through his
he
mind?
didn't.
Yeah,
No, he
because
didn't. Except that his dad had died in
Yeah.
that way, and he did not want his mother contacted. He wanted to contact her himself. He didn't want her to know from the police. They called his wife, who met him at the hospital. And again, I invited him to take time to consider the reason that he is still alive and what impact his life might have on other people, because he was saved. And even for each one of us, even without a major tragedy, and I'm sure many people at this table have had tragedies in their lives. I mean, we're old enough that we've had tough things happen to us, to just think, who are we and what have we yet to do? What can we yet do in our lives? Once again, I'm reminded that Jesus asked for something to eat. Like a ventriloquist drinking a glass of water, or a magician rolling up his sleeves to show nothing is hidden there, Jesus is asking for a piece of fish, something that seems impossible. It's real, folks, he's saying. Watch me eat this piece of fish. I'm no ghost. I'm not a figment of your imagination or delusion brought on by a lack of sleep or the constant terror of the authorities. I am as real as you. I am here with you, and I am who I said I am. And that's where our text ends this week, with Jesus eating that piece of fish. We don't go into the mission, into the sending that he did. Not yet. Here's the point of this text, I think. Life is real. Faith is real. It's grounded in the reality in which we live. Touch and see. That's what we're called to do. The gospel, the life of faith, has to be grounded in reality. That's why Jesus took this moment with his friends. That's why we can take a breath at this point before we launch into a life of going into the ends of the earth to tell the story. If we don't start with the disciples in this moment, if we don't watch that piece of fish being eaten, if we don't grab hold, we won't see. And if we don't see, then we are likely to turn the gospel message into one of the hereafter, the sweet by and by, and not the here and now. I think I've shared the story of the gentleman when I was at the Matfield Green Church. When he first started coming, and I first started leading worship there, he's a good man, but he didn't think very highly of himself and didn't think his life was worth very much, wasn't sure he would get into heaven. And we had a number of conversations, and I shared a number of books with him, and by the time I left, 7 years later, he came up to me and said, I get it, Billie. What's important is what I do here and now, which is what he was doing anyway as a good man, but he didn't see that as important enough. What was important initially was afterlife, and he didn't think he was good enough for the afterlife with God. And so that's just one of the success stories that I love to tell. We're liable to think of that all that matters is getting souls into some spiritualized heaven somewhere else, instead of feeding those who are hungry for breakfast right here in our midst, in our own neighborhoods. We're liable to think that injustice here doesn't matter because it'll all be sorted out one day, instead of advocating for the oppressed and working for justice in our own communities here, now, and today. Take hold of me and see. That statement is about wanting to live in the world that Jesus lived in and bringing hope to our reality every day. So I leave you, me, all of us together with the question, what can we provide? What hands-on proof can we give that Jesus is alive among us? And I struggle sometimes because I hear that perhaps the understanding of Jesus is different in this denomination than in my denomination. So I struggle sometimes preaching Jesus. So if you need to use the word divine or God, that's fine with me. I think we're all talking about the same thing.
I don't think you have to struggle using the name Jesus.
Thank you.
Not at all.
I will claim that then. Thank you. Thank you. But what is it that we can do? What can we still do with our hands, with our feet, with our eyes, with our ears, with our words? That's been a hard one for me, is speaking up. Partly being an introvert, partly being a 9 on the Enneagram, which means I'm non-confrontational at all. So to speak up is a hard thing to do, and I'm learning more and more how to do that safely and yet in
But I
important
think
ways.
it's not so much doing it, is for the right reason. If you are only showing, I mean, that's what Trump is doing. And I don't know that he's right or wrong. No judgment there, but I think it's important for us to recognize that if we're doing it, is it for the right reason?
It's a good comment. Thank you. Yes.
Anyway,
Yes, because there are things that are done for the wrong reasons. And
Great.